We are getting fancy here on the Comic Corner. How's it going, everyone? My name is Damon Gray, and we have a very special guest today because we wanted to change it up a little bit. We've been doing a lot of creators, and I want to get down into the fans. And there is one fan who I couldn't think of a better person to have on. He is from comicbook.com. He is a host on ComicBook Nation. He is a wrestling extraordinaire. We have Mr. Matthew Aguilar. Matt, thanks for
How
coming
are
on.
you, man? Thanks so much for having me. What a wonderful intro. That's so nice. Wow.
Well, it
Appreciate it.
just made sense. Like I was like, man, I want to get some fans on here because when you talk to creators, it's really cool to get inside their heads, but you want to like just like get deep down into comic stuff, and there's just so many good comics right now. And I was like, Matt,
Oh
can you come on so we can just talk indie books and talk Marvel and talk about the books that no one's talking about?
yeah, no, I absolutely we were actually joking before. It's all the ones that I try and get into the poll and they never win and I always feel terrible about it. So I don't have like an army of people that I can just throw at a poll, at a poll, army of bots. I
I'm
wish I
always
could
with you
speak
right
for them.
behind her, so there's an army of two at least because Matt's agenda has to go somewhere.
Oh no.
So I always want to get into whoever we have on. There's the classic trope on what is your comic book origin story? How did you get into this crazy world of just like floppies and pictures and words and thought bubbles?
Well, for me, I had been around them like at an earlier age. Like I had been interested in them, but I wouldn't say I like ever kind of jumped in fully and they became like my love until probably about was that seventh grade, sixth grade, seventh grade? Might have been seventh grade. So sixth or seventh grade, I moved around a lot. Like I was like at a different school. There was
Mm.
one year I was at two different schools, so like I always place time by what school I was at. So there was one time, and I believe it was like sixth or seventh grade, where our school library had like you had that, I don't know if you remember, but like you had that set assigned library time where you would go and you would like sit and like check out books and stuff. And
Oh yeah.
ours had two comics, and they had a subscription, so they had two like recurring comics that they would get new issues of as they came out, and it was Superman and it was Spider-Man. Those were the two they
Oh.
had. One of Marvel, one of DC. And so it was me and another guy. We were friends and stuff, and we actually created our own little comic book because, like, like everyone does. I feel like at that
Of
age, so
course.
like, I think I did the artwork and he did the script. And when I say script and when I say artwork, I'm being very liberal uh, in those terms. But like we tried and stuff. So we would always like they had you assigned to like different tables, and you didn't know what table you'd be at, right? So when you sat down, we would kind of be like doing this weird like Wild West shootout thing, looking at each other because they would randomize the call for the tables to go get books. So there wasn't always a new issue, right? Because we're only talking two. So we would
Yep.
like race to get to the one first, and then we would just reread the other one if there wasn't a new issue out or whatever. And this was during like I read the lead up to Death of Superman at this like
Wow.
spot, right? Because we're talking like
There you
that's
go.
the era we're talking about. So
Yep.
leading up to that, I was already out of that by the time it actually happened. But still, like that's where I discovered that love of Superman and classic Spider-Man. That's why I will always associate Spider-Man with like Mark Bagley, like that. That is my era. So it started there, and then as I got into more and more comics, I started like seeking out comic stores, seeking out trading card stores at the time, and then that's kind of when I also discovered my love for the X-Men because animated series was somewhere in there, right? And I always loved, I just loved those characters. I had those old VHS, like adventure tapes where it was like the X-Men. It was like that's where like Dazzler, like Love of Dazzler, and like Colossus, like those characters came from. Um, so yeah, like I just ended up just like jumping all in to that world, and I was also very like I loved the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I love Transformers, Thundercats, like whatever it was. Like I was very much in. I was all into that world. I was going to be a nerd from birth, so it was it was
You're
always
you're
going to be that
sold
way.
pretty early
Yeah,
on. Is there an Is there a niche X-Men? There's always a niche mutant or a niche X-Men everyone loves. What's yours?
So I have always loved Jubilee, and I have always loved
Jubilee.
Dazzler. But I will say, if we're talking, if we're talking like
Niche.
that,
Because
mine is
Jubilee
Maggot.
now, with the resurgence of the X-Men animated
Right.
series.
All okay. I will say this. All of the characters that like I used to just sit and everyone rip on me for liking, right? Darkhawk,
Oh,
Spider Woman,
Darkhawk.
Carol Danvers because it was Miss Marvel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like all those characters are now like big time characters or about to be. So whatevs, right? Like I was ahead of the curve. But
Take that.
I will say Maggot. That's the one that I
Maggot,
adore.
yes.
I
So
adore him.
I Yeah, I just got into Maggot because there's like a Marvel Unlimited series where Maggot was the star. And I was like, what is going on? Why are we doing a Maggot book? But like the Marvel Unlimited stuff is like perfect for those
Yeah,
characters where you're
right.
able to get like a little deeper and it's like, yep, I'm in on this now.
He's got his own action figure now. It just came out, which I gotta go hunt down. But
What?
it just came out. Yeah, it's like in the last second to last wave they've done is a Maggot
Oh
figure. So
man,
I gotta go. It comes with
that's
Eenie and Meanie.
wild.
I love that character. That character is so ridiculous. And I mean, we'll get into this
Absolutely.
later.
Can you explain who Maggot is? Because we're talking niche comic characters, so it's like everyone's like, "What is
Okay.
Maggot? Is this a bug?" Well, bugs are kind of all involved.
So right. So it's two slugs. So Maggot is actually a character that has essentially the ability to. He has two slugs that live in him,
In his
and
belly area. Yeah.
yeah, and they can be sent out, and they will literally devour anything. Right. So they're amazing for like devouring through weapons, armor, all this kinds of stuff, like all these practical nerdy uses. And then I just always loved. I mean, he's very much like a an offspring of the 90s X-Men designs that I
Very
love, like
much.
that late 90s look. So like ridiculous colors like blue and purple, and he's got big oversized jacket even though he's like a super skinny guy. He's and so like his background is like really, when they did his origin story, it's actually kind of, there's actually a lot of like heartbreaking stuff there because like he grew up, he was like, really starved, and it was a nutritional thing, and then he kind of like this whole thing with these two slugs happened, and they are like his essentially his like food system, right? And then but they also like allow him to kind of have these like extra strength and all these other things. So it's kind of this, it's very much in line with what X-Men are. It's this, your powers are a gift and a curse, and there's always this kind of negative side to them, and the toll it takes on you. So it's very much like right up an X-Men fan's alley. So yeah, that's the character. The character hasn't been around a ton recently, but he has made some scattershot appearances, and I adore when he does.
Yeah, go check out that if anyone hasn't. Go check out that Marvel Unlimited little comic series. It was like an X-Men comic series. I think Maggot was like the star of it for like 3, 4 issues, as well as Emma Frost was in there as well. Very, very good, very fun. If you don't know who Maggot is, it's a great introduction to him as well. Any writers that when you were kind of growing up and getting into the comic biz and getting into the fandom itself that you're like, yep, this is the writer. If they write anything, they could write whatever, and I'll follow them.
At the time, I used to. I mean, I would say probably when I was really starting to be cognizant of
Hmm.
writers and artists and like who they were, because for like a while, it's kind of like I like this artist, but you don't know who that artist is. Like you just know their style.
Absolutely.
That's
Yep.
how, I mean, that's how I was with Joe Mad forever, and then I was like, oh, it's Joe, it's Joe Mad. But like before I knew that, I just knew I loved those X-Men books. Um, for me, it started to be, I would say like Dennis Hopeless is one. I will read anything he does. He's got such a, I don't know, there's just such a wonderful lightheartedness and snappiness to his banter. Bendis is another. I know that's a
Mm.
really big name, but it's because I just fell in love with his writing and how he can take a very what might seem on paper as not interesting scenario or very just ordinary setting, and he can make that like some of the most riveting dialogue and back and forth. I mean, many of my favorite Bendis scenes are literally just people talking, and that's, a skill that like is impressive when you're dealing with this kind of medium, which is, we're so used to big superhero fights and big battles, and that's what I mean. The medium suits it, so that's great. But
Yeah.
when you can take that and literally make 20 boxes of people just talking, and you can make that the most interesting page in your book, I
Hmm.
think that's an amazing skill. Um,
Absolutely. Is there any comics right now, before we start deep diving, that you're reading right now that's on your weekly pull list, like three, four, 5 books a month that you're like, those are my go-tos?
yeah, I will say, Once and Future was until it ended. That was literally my favorite book just about every month, and now it's over. I'm still very sad. Still have a hangover from that.
I have Once in the Future. I have the I think it's 2, 3 volumes. I have those on a holiday list so I can read
Oh,
them in full because I haven't read it yet.
so
I've heard
good. Oh,
things.
it's so good. I mean, look, here's the thing. I'm a sucker for Arthurian legends.
Hmm.
Anything King Arthur, I will read or watch or give a chance. Same way with Robin Hood, and
Yep.
crazily, this series has both, and it's awesome. I just love how. I mean, Kieran Gillen's another. You could say
Yes.
there's another writer right there that I will always give a book, even if it's a premise or concept that I'm like, that's not really my jam. I'll still read I'll still read the first issue because 9 out of 10 times it'll be something worth checking out. So yeah, that one definitely. Another one that just actually recently ended was Sweet Paprika, by
Yep.
Mirko Andolfo. That and it's weird because like if you look back at my review of the first issue, I was not sold because I think the first issue is probably the weakest issue of like the whole entire series, and I was like, I don't know about this. Like I don't know, but I love the artwork and stuff, but like sometimes it goes too far. And then like as the series went on, that became one of my absolute favorite. Every month I looked forward to reading that book, and it's just such a weird and quirky heaven and hell rom-com. I mean, that's what that book is, and
Yep.
it's fantastic. Oh, it's so good. And that recently also ended. So, um, as do a power
But that's
bomb.
also that is the good thing about books. Some books is I love my ongoing issues, but I do also really enjoy when Abel kind of knows when to end. So then it's
Right.
just a good read from here to finish, and you're not going on for 55 issues on a certain superhero
I
team that
agree.
probably should have ended a few whiles ago.
That's yeah.
Speaking with Marvel, an ongoing right now is Captain Marvel
Oh
by
yes.
Kelly Thompson, and I love this book.
I look. You will get no argument from me as a as a fantastic book. I adore it, and they've Kelly's. I mean, we were talking about writers. Kelly's another one.
Hmm.
She hops on a book. I will give a chance. She's done such wonderful things with the character and with Carol as a
Yes,
character and her
specifically,
supporting
yes, absolutely.
cast. It's just man, that book has the best supporting cast. I will say has one of the best. So it's just the one I would get like flamed. Has one of the best supporting casts in comics. They are fantastic. They're so good.
I totally agree. I will stick that flag with you on the best, if not one of the best, supporting cast because I think in this book that is what makes Carol. It brings her back down from position to where everyone remembers Civil War too, and that is a big, awful stain on that character. From there, it's been how do we bring Carol back to a place where people can get behind her again because that event was awful.
Yeah, it's
It was
bad.
bad.
Yeah, it's terrible.
So this run from Kelly, to me, is the best Captain Marvel run. I think it surpassed Kelly Sue's, and it's just because it's brought Carol to me back to a place where I'm like, I can get behind her again.
Ooh, kids better than Kelly Sue's. That's a
I think so.
you know. Here's the thing. Kelly Sue's is because there are some spots in Kelly Sue's run where I'm like, yeah, that was fun, but like it wasn't like, like there have been comparable events in both Kelly's runs that I think like they're really fun, but like they wouldn't necessarily, if I was giving someone a guide to like here's what you need to read, those might not be in there. But I think it's hard to argue that Kelly's is man, that's really hard. Oh, that's a
It is
hard thing
difficult.
because Kelly Sue's really helped define not Carol, but a new direction for her that like she had been kind of building towards for a minute, and she like brought that to fruition because it's not like Kelly just like completely changed the character on the day that she jumped into
Mhm.
the book, and I imagine she would say the same thing. Like it, she took what was there and really just like, okay, this character has been on the precipice of this for a long time. It's time. Like let's move the character forward, and whether that was editorial or just choices or just like we don't really need to go there yet, whatever, she had been there for a long time, so Kelly Sue really
Yeah,
like took her over and scored the touchdown essentially. But Kelly had Thompson has done such wonderful work with like expanding her circle, um in a like really like those characters feel like family. Like you when you talk
that's the
about a
key
Captain
word to me.
Marvel
Yep.
book, it's like it feels like a Captain Marvel family book. And
Hmm.
she didn't have that before. Like she had certain people, and like Jessica Drew obviously has always kind of been a focal point, but like she never had like this. Like now it's like between Lori and Hazmat and Binary now, like this,
Binary now too. Yep.
yeah, Rhodey, they all feel, it's like when you talk about a Captain Marvel book, you talk about a Captain Marvel family now, and she did not have that. And it's starting to be along the lines of like, oh, when you talk about Batman, you talk about the Bat family. Superman is doing
Yep.
the same thing now over in Superman, right? It's kind of, they're really embracing that idea of like, here's lineage and here's a supporting cast that we care about. And Thompson has done that for Captain Marvel, and that had not been done like that before. So, I can't argue with you. I'd have to like really like sit and
It's
like
they're
read them
very
both.
two agreed. Yeah, they're two very identical yet different with what they've done to her character. As you mentioned, Kelly Sue's to me really like brought down the military aspect of Carol, which is so important to her character. It really went forward with that. Kelly Thompson to me is a little more fun because that's kind of what Kelly Thompson's done. She really likes to have fun with these characters. We had her
Right.
have like a fling with Doctor Strange, had her
That was a
become
great one.
magical at one point. She lost her powers again from Rogue, but not the way that you're thinking of. So it's like she likes to
Right.
have fun
Yes.
with these characters. And you also bring in that reminded me that first issue of this Kelly Thompson run brought in the character of Star and like the human Infinity
Oh
Stone
yes.
saga that kind of petered out a little bit because I was like, man, what a
Yeah.
cool idea, and that just like went away in a Black Cat book.
Yeah. I don't. That's one of those that like I feel. I don't know whether it was there was an original, and I, by the way, I say this as completely like non-informed. So,
Mm.
so like I don't, like I'm not saying like, oh, like I know this. Like I'm not trying to armchair quarterback, but it just gives the impression that like there was either a plan in place that got changed with that character, or
Yep.
someone really wanted her for something else because like, oh, hey, you made this like really powerful character, like fits in what we're doing,
Insanely
and
powerful.
then
Yeah.
yeah, and then they didn't like know what to do with her. So maybe that's why. But like it feels like if she had stayed in the immediate Marvel book, like Captain Marvel book or whatever, in that kind of surroundings, maybe she wouldn't just kind of be aimless. Because it was cool what they were doing for her for a minute. Like, she ends up with the Thunderbolts. She's literally like
Hmm.
locked away because she's so powerful, whatever. Like, okay, that's interesting at least, for a minute.
Yep.
And then like after that, she just kind of
Disappeared. That
floating in
whole
the
it was like
ether.
they're having a good saga build up where it's like, yeah, these human infinity stones, super powerful people, sketchy backgrounds, not great. It's like, yeah, this is cool. Like, are they going to be good guys? Are they going to be bad guys? And then where'd they go?
Yeah, pretty much.
So,
Yeah, like that's what it
but that
feels like.
happens in comics, you know.
Yeah,
You've been
absolutely.
around this long enough, like that happens. And then maybe like 3 4 years down the line, it's like, remember them?
I mean, look, that's what happened with Maggot. Okay, there was a plan in
Yep.
place. Someone thought that was a great idea, and then someone else came in and went, "I don't know what the hell to do with that character." So they just kind of shoved him to the side. Beak is another one. Beak, people thought that was a great character, and then someone's like, "I don't know. I don't have a spot for a bird person in my in my group." So okay, like you get used to it. It still sucks, but like you get used to it, you know.
So another book I've been into, and you've talked about on Comic Book Nation as well, has been Jed McKay's Moon Knight. Which, if you haven't, if you're new to Moon Knight, and this came out at the perfect time when the show was coming out, I think this book is fantastic as a jumping on point.
I couldn't agree more. I think this was like that, and I think that was kind of that was always going to be the bar to which it was judged, was that you have unprecedented momentum. Characters getting a show is going to be in the MCU. Like, you know, you got to nail that, because yes, there is this myth that like people who watch the shows or watch the movies don't buy comics at all. They don't buy comics enough. But
Hmm.
they do look for things. I mean, I don't know how many times after a character gets a show I'm asked, or I'm in discussions with people like, "Oh, so what would I do if I wanted to start like grabbing stuff?" And then, you know, "Oh, okay." Like, so it happens, and like, or Christmas comes up and birthdays and people are curious, and so like I'm the one that's been known to like, "Yeah, yeah, I'll buy you a graphic novel." You know, so like I'll get you that stuff. So the need is there. So if you're going to have that, there was a lot riding on it, especially coming off of an event that started out really interesting and did not end in a. I did not end up really liking Age of Khonshu. I thought it had really great ideas. I've
Yep.
kind of been mixed. I was very
Hmm.
mixed on Jason Aaron's, still Jason Aaron's Avengers run, because there's some really cool things to it. And when they
Yep.
were like, "Oh, we're gonna bring in Moon Knight, it's gonna be this big thing," I was really excited, and it started out really interesting, and then like it just, I don't know, it just left that character in such a weird space, and so I was like, okay, so
Yeah.
for to come off of that, not only come off of that and kind of sort of have to rectify that and move the character forward, but then also appeal to all these people that are going to be jumping into that character for the first time. And Moon Knight is not the easiest character to just jump in on. It's amazing. I mean, it's phenomenal what they've been able to do. That book is fantastic. It has no reason to be that good. Like it's that good. It's great.
It really is that good. And again, if you've anyone who's listening hasn't gotten into a Moon Knight comic, you want to know where to begin, this is a fantastic place to start. Jeff Lemire's run also, especially if you like
It's
the
very good.
show, very much influenced on the show. But this one right here really dives deep into his supernatural side. He essentially is now living in a giant, spooky, haunted house from a Doctor Strange book years ago, which is just so perfect. It's so good, and that's something that Jed McKay, as a writer, he loves to do. He remembers like one small thing from like one book 10 years ago, and he's like, I'm gonna take that and put it here because it fits perfectly, and it just works out so well.
Yeah, I mean that's the stuff that like, you know, Bendis and
Mm.
Jeff Johns like made careers out of, right? It's being able to pull these small little things and create, you know, I mean, geez, like Johns creates an entire army of lantern corps from like one small, not even like a short story. Like it was essentially like just one-off story in the Green Lantern mythos, right? And then like takes that and like runs with it. It's just like, oh my god, like that. It's so cool to see what you can do. And yeah, for him to, for that to be the headquarters, I'm like, oh
It's
duh,
so good.
that's
It's
brilliant.
so
Like why
good.
would I've not thought about that. And then to make the, you know, not to get in like crazy spoilers because you should totally go read the book, but like it's been out long enough. So like for him to make like the other fist, because we always refer to him as the fist, right? But then there's like two fists. I'm like, duh, like that's brilliant. It's just a
It's
lot of
stuff like
those
that where you're
moments.
like, how is this not thought of before?
Yes, it's just so smart. And
Hmm.
you know, to make like, yeah, I just, you know, and even like the whole therapy, like him going to therapy and like being monitored by the Avengers, like that's another brilliant way to kind of move from one event to the other and not, and still get growth and evolution out of the character, and not regress and just like, well, we're just gonna reset and like imagine that didn't happen. Like, I understand when we have to do that in comics, but like I don't like it because like I'm not, it's kind of like when wrestling does that thing of like, hey, ignore that this character was somebody else last week. Like, it's I don't, yes, I can do it and I'm used to it, but I don't want to. Like, give me a reason. It doesn't have to be good, even just give me a reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine.
Yep. The one last book I want to talk about. We don't have to talk about the book in general because I think a lot of people are lukewarm or really like it or don't like it, and that was Axe Judgment Day, the event that just
Oh,
happened.
yeah.
I personally very much enjoyed this. I've been reading all of Kieran Gillen's Eternals runs
Mm,
recently, and I really enjoyed it. So this just felt like a perfect continuation from that. For those who may not have been caught up on the Eternals, were probably very confused or didn't really get what was going on because the Eternals concepts are just like so big and out there and
yeah.
broad and weird to a point. But more or less, I want to ask you, what do you think makes a good event?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, oh man, is this what that feels like? This is what that feels like when someone says that. I've never like I get that every so
Ooh.
often. I'm like, oh, that's a good question. I'm like, it always makes me feel warm and snuggly inside. Um, so okay, so for me, and probably one of the reasons why this one isn't hitting for me is because so if you're gonna do an event, I'm totally fine with upsetting the apple cart a bit. Like it's okay to make some changes that not everyone is going to like, because that makes your world interesting and it actually makes it honestly feel more real because not everything in life happens the way we'd want it. So that having everyone kind of deal with that is good. I like ramifications that came from an event and they stick around for a while. So you brought up Civil War II, which is terrible. Civil War II is
Yes, it is.
Civil War II is I go off on this all day. Civil War II is penance for making Iron Man the bad guy in Civil War One. That's all it was. It was a mea culpa to Iron Man fans because we're sorry, Cap was right, and I don't know how the hell you defended Iron Man in the first place. So Cap was right. Thor knew it. That's why he whooped his, that's why he like whooped his tail later on. So now we're gonna make Captain Marvel the bad guy, and we're gonna make Iron Man the good guy. And that's all that was. And to me, that's why it like I can't stand it. It's right up there with AVX. AVX is
Yeah.
not good either.
For those who never read Civil War II, you can if you want. I'll never not suggest to read a book. But just know that
Oh, you're
Captain
better
Marvel
than
was
me.
so in the wrong. Captain Marvel was so in the wrong that Kamala Khan went against her. That's
It's
how
so
wrong Carol was.
oh gosh. Yeah, that's all. But that's all that was. That very much came up as that was a pivot for Tony. It had nothing to do. You
Yeah.
could have stuck, I don't know, typeface in there, and it would have had the same effect. It was never about the person that was in that spot. It was about Tony and rehabilitating Tony because in your
Mhm.
movie universe, everyone likes him. And in your comics, a long time went by where no one liked him because he was a jerk, and so was Reed Richards. So anyway, all right. So I'm not gonna get into that. So for an event, but here's the thing: the first Civil War also pissed off people because
It
it
did.
had a divisive ending. Cap ends up getting killed, right? And there's things like that. But the way it left the universe, though, for like the next year and change, there were still things people were dealing with from that event. Like there was still bad blood between certain groups. There was still laws and stuff to work out. People were, some of the fever had died down, but you were still dealing with all the after effects. That to me is great. I like that. And that's what I mean. Secret Invasion was amazing. But honestly, Dark Reign was better because Dark Reign was far more interesting and just in terms of like scope and in terms of how many people it affected and people living under this new world and all that stuff is so rich and included all like every part of the universe. So I like that. When an event comes in and is kind of like by the end wraps it up to a point where it feels like you didn't really need to read it because it really hasn't had this like It doesn't have to be huge, but it has to be a lasting impact, and it doesn't
Hmm.
feel like that, then I think of like Fear itself. Like I think of things like that that kind of, yes, they had a momentary effect, but then we were pretty much on to whatever the next thing is. If you're gonna do something like that, it at least needs to have an impact on a character. I think of King of Black. King of Black,
Yes.
like its effect on the overall Marvel universe was pretty small because things kind of went back to normal and big bad's gone and whatever. But if you're reading Venom and you're reading those books, it continues to have a huge effect.
Mm.
That's my issue with like a lot of the Spider-Man events over recent years. Like they don't feel like they have this huge effect on the world nor Spider-Man because it feels like we're getting kind of a new
You
status
get
quo
that
on him.
reset button right on the
Yeah,
last issue that it just boop, all gone.
yeah, yeah, and it's just like, okay, no, then that's kind of like, I mean, Batman, you know, like Batman R.I.P. I would have loved for that character to have stayed gone a little bit longer. I do like that we got some really great things out of it because we got Dick Grayson as Batman and we got like that
Mhm.
whole team up with Damien as Robin is one of my favorites. But like he should have been gone longer. Death of Wolverine. Feel like that should have lasted longer, but I mean, hey, they held out a year. So
Yeah.
without their marquee
I
character, even though he was
I
like three other
yeah,
places.
I definitely agree with you on that aspect of though of like the lasting impacts. I've already kind of accidentally spoiled Judgment Day's big moment to some of my friends accidentally. I'm so sorry. But this does have a lasting impact for the Eternals. Everyone
Right.
else though, literally reset button.
Yeah.
Very minor thing with the X-Men, and by the end, the Avengers are going back to living in Avengers Mountain, which was like the one thing by the end I was like, please just get rid of that.
You don't like that? You don't like
No,
them living in a celestial?
no, I do not. But I digress. I want to move on to DC for a hot second because there's one thing with DC when I was like getting into comics that was a really tough thing was I think Marvel does a very good job with your preview page. Summary. This is what's
Mm-hmm.
going on. Here we go. Most DC books don't really do that. So if you're going in on the middle of a story arc and you don't realize it because you're just going to a shop, whatever, you pick up an issue, I want to pick up Nightwing 93, whatever, you're in the middle of an arc. And they do a good enough job in the story, but you
Right.
get a little overwhelmed. So it's a little more challenging. DC doesn't do the number resets on a lot of their main titles like some other companies do to help newer readers get in, which they still have like the legacy numbers as they call it as like your
Mm-hmm.
main number. But there is still a DC book that I do love, and I already said it, which is Nightwing.
So good.
And I can't put it in. So my all time favorite comic book run is Matt Fraction and David Aja's Hawkeye.
Oh, okay.
I put this right next to it in terms of enjoyment for me. It
Wow.
has just, I don't know, I think it's a little different because Hawkeye's was so ground level. You really got to see Clint, like, what he does. In this, it's so feel good to me. Like, every issue, I'm laughing, I'm smiling. It brings you up, and then you have, like, a little emotional beat. I haven't been enjoying a book like this much from a big two company since that Fraction Hawkeye book. And I want to know your
Wow.
opinions on this.
Oh man, I can't disagree. I mean, Tom Taylor has just, you know, done wonders. Well, I mean, he's another writer that can pretty much do no wrong. I mean, from from Deceased to Seven Secrets to like whatever he wants to do. I mean, he's kind of amazing at his craft. So,
Mm.
but one of the things he does really well is spotlight relationships. And to me, that's what like Nightwing. He gets to the core of a character, and he spotlights key relationships that bring more out of those characters. So like with the Babs Dick stuff, right? Like it's been wonderful in that book. Not overplayed, not like he never lets it overwhelm Grayson as like a person. You're still getting to know him, and you're still seeing flourishes of him that you've not seen before, which is impressive with that character because he's so iconic. And it's just, yeah, I can't say enough about that book. That has been one of the most not pleasant surprises because I knew it was going to be good because Tom Taylor was writing it, but I didn't know.
Hmm.
I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't know it was going to be this good. Like, I
Yep.
didn't know it was going to
It
be like that.
Yes. A big problem that a lot of people bring up with like the Bat Family books is Batman is always in it. It's a Batman book featuring so and so. That is not the case with this.
Right.
This is a Nightwing comic. Occasionally Batman shows up because of course he does because he wants to like
Right.
check in on his boy to be like, "How you doing over in Bloodhaven, kid?" And he's like, "I'm fine, go away."
Yeah. No,
But
that's
it's
exactly.
great.
Yeah.
It's great.
But
Someone
I
actually
agree
it
with
was
those people.
Carlos. Yeah, go ahead.
No, no, I agree with those people though. That
Yeah.
there is that thing of like Batman can very easily overtake a book, whether it's a
Yes.
team book or a solo book. I understand it completely.
We had Carlos in the comments. We're live on YouTube and Twitch for the first time, so hello everybody. We had
Hey.
Carlos in the comments who said Nightwing is the most Marvel DC character.
Oh,
I think to a degree, agree because a lot of the DC characters, the mindsets are they're gods trying to be human. That's like the big, stereotype with DC characters. And you don't get that with Grayson at all. He's just feels like a guy trying to go out and do the best he can and try to be independent of Bruce and Batman and everything. And that's his drive. So I think I agree with that.
I mean, it's also probably why, you know, it's so weird. Like, it's so, I will say this, like, next generation of DC heroes doesn't struggle with that as much as the, like, initial group of heroes does because they are, like, they're, were written with more modern sensibilities and stuff right from the beginning. And so
Mhm.
they have some of those more kind of relatable, because that's the thing about Marvel characters, right? Marvel characters are kind of very relatable people just like trying to do superheroing is like a day job. It's like it's approached as a job. So like they're just trying to make it through, do the best they can, be the best people, and they're very flawed in that, right? And the thing with DC's upper tier of characters, like these people were like gods, and I mean literally have new gods in the name. Like some are just on different planets that like spit fire, others are like were created from a group of little blue aliens. Like there's a lot of that, but that makes them more um iconic in a way because they're so detached from like they're so different from what everything else is that you instantly recognize them. Like
Mm.
most people who don't even read Green Lantern will know what a Green Lantern looks like because they're
Yep.
just so there's just something about whether it's a silhouette or the color scheme or whatever. Like there's just something so entrenched about Superman's the same way. While in this day and age, Captain America, Iron Man, Spider-Man is easily, Marvel's most popular character, right? Spider-Man might be more popular across the board as far as like if you talk to 100 people, they might like Spider-Man more. Superman is more recognizable everywhere. Like it's just a presence, right? So that's
Yep.
Batman is the most popular character on DC's thing because I feel like it blends the two. He's relatable in a way because you understand why he became Batman. You understand the tragedy that informs him, and then you also he has no powers, so he has to do it all himself. And yes, he's loaded, but in this world of like ridiculous billionaires, like even that idea is not so so whatever. So I feel like I can understand that Nightwing blends both of those even more. Like he's a refined
Mm.
version
Yep.
of Bruce. He's one without all of the brooding. He's one without all of the detachment because that's been Bruce's biggest thing, right? And Dick's not that. Like he's not that. That's why he's so beloved within the community. So yeah, I can see that argument. I think that's probably I think I would say it probably he's the best blend of both. He's the best blend of both that
Okay.
both company has. Like he's a
I
perfect
like that.
amalgam of the two.
Yep. I want to go back to a book that you brought up in the middle, which was Green Lantern. I haven't read this most recent Green Lantern. And off camera when we were going back and forth, you said you're reading the current Green Lantern one, right?
So the new, so I'm trying to think because like the last Green Lantern, um, I read Green Lantern like at all times. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually reading Emerald Knights right now,
Okay.
because a buddy Russ Burlingame sent me like he found it in his stuff, and he's like, "Hey, I know you're a fan. Do you want this?" Like, yes, yes, please. I don't have mine. I can't find it, and I'm reading it. And the latest one just ended, and the new one's about to begin.
Okay.
But I just love talking Green Lanterns. I'm
So I
always up for talking.
don't read Green Lantern. I want you to sell me on them.
Like at all? Like period? Like
I
none of the
don't. Yeah,
characters?
no,
You've
straight
never
up.
read them?
I think I've read like two Green Lantern books my entire life.
Okay. Okay. So so first question, just for
Okay.
context. What
Yep.
like why haven't you read them? Is it because like you're like actively don't like them, or is it more just like, hey, they're never like it's never
No.
interested me?
It's more because it's really never interested me type of thing.
Okay.
I've just never got into it. DC, as I mentioned, has been a little bit of a struggle for me whenever I like try to dip my toe in. I feel so overwhelmed and I'm like, I feel like I'm missing 19,000 comics worth of context
I can
here.
see that. I can see that.
Um, so that's been a little bit of a struggle for me. But for Green Lantern specifically, it's never interested me, but I wouldn't mind dipping my toe in it.
Okay. So so for you specifically, so in
Okay.
general, what I love, and this probably dates back to my favorite lantern is, because I think that's actually the beauty of the Green Lantern Corps, is that yes, the very quick um, description is, hey, they're cops in space, but that's really not been what attracted me to them like as a group. It's the fact that like most teams you find, like whether it's like an Avengers team up or something like that, they're putting all these people together because of the powers that they have, right, to complement each other. And yes, they're going to have different personalities, but like it's more about like, oh, we need a psychic. Okay, we need a tank. Hey, we need a this, right? It's like you're putting together an Overwatch team when you put together a superhero team. That's what you're doing. You're picking roles in WoW, and that's what you're doing when you create that. Very rarely are you basing it on their personalities first and then whatever they bring to the table. Green Lantern, it's that way because everyone starts with the same base. Everyone starts with, you have a ring that can literally make anything you can imagine. So it is only limited by your own imagination and insight and creativity. But it also, what I love that Johns did was kind of, and it went a step further, and he went, okay, yes, it does that, but it also acclimates to the person wielding it. So that's why it acts, your power acts differently between you all. So like John Stewart, being the kind of military man, very focused on like how things are built and not even just like how it is from A to B, but like he wants to see all the rivets in between. When he builds something, it is literally built as if an architect built it over 6 months. When he creates something with his ring. Likewise,
Mhm.
Guy Gardner is so full of enthusiasm, just raw emotion, a little bit of recklessness, right? That's who he is. His ring spouts off like it's like someone's trying to restrain a water hose. So it's always just like barely keeping it together. When Kyle has his, he's an artist, which is always why he's my favorite Lantern. Kyle Rayner is always my favorite Green Lantern. And so when he creates these vivid huge things that honestly a comic fan would create, because that's how our brains work. And so it was just always cool to see how that idea was reversed. And the team has also one of the most eclectic groups because they're aliens, they defend the universe. So it's not just another group of people that all look like people I might see at Target. Like it's a bunch of people that look all different. There's a dude that is literally a volcano. He is a walking volcano. There's one who's a planet. There's a squirrel.
Okay.
Chip.
There's a
Chip the
squirrel.
squirrel. Chip the squirrel's amazing. There's one that's got like tentacles, and there's another one that looks like a weird, like pink alien thing. They're so fun, and then they mix all together, and they have all the same power, but it's in the way they use it, and they complement each other, and you're good. It's just so it can be so fun. It can also be, more of a. It really depends on how people take the angle. Sometimes they take it more
Mhm.
like a Law and Order angle, like the procedural, and they do it that way. Others just do the high adventure stuff. It just can be so much, and so while some of it might not work, I just love how many risks that concept allows
Okay.
for, and it just led to some of my favorite books of all time. For you specifically, what I would say is that if you are a fan of like Nightwing or Batman, and you want some of that groundedness in your Green Lantern story, but you also it gives you a good idea of like the fantastical that it brings, I would say read Far Sector, because one, it's
Okay.
done, so you can read the whole thing. It's stunning because it's Jamal Campbell's artwork and it's just beautiful. And two, N.K. Jemisin brings it to one character. It's all about Joe, and seeing her be essentially like almost like a Batman-esque detective in this like crazy alien world that has all these different ways of governments and stuff, and she's supposed to kind of keep the peace. And it's seeing her adjust to all this. She's amazing. She's relatable. She's fun. I would say that's the book for you. I think that
Okay.
would be a great dip. And if you don't like that, then it's just not your speed, which is fine.
All
Anyway,
right. I'm
I hope
sold.
that wasn't too
I'm
long. I'm
sold.
sorry for rambling. I
I'm
apologize.
sold. I'm sold. I do want to quickly get into, while we still have time, we are in a golden generation of indie comics. And you're about to bring it up earlier, but I wanted to save it for the end because Do a Powerbomb
Oh, so good.
is so good. And you don't have to be a wrestling fan to like this book. You really don't. It is that good of a story. You care for these characters. You have emotional beats that really just like punch you in the face. Not even the gut, just straight in the
Yeah,
face.
straight in the face.
And the how I would say it for those who don't know what we're talking about is there is a young girl who joins a Mortal Kombat esque, Space Jam esque wrestling tournament in space to bring back her mother. And
That's
that's the
awesome.
story.
Since that
That's the story.
description, man, comics rule.
Comics are
Where
great.
else?
I
Where
love
else are you gonna
comics.
get
They're
that?
so weird.
And did you read the most recent one?
I did, and I think it's the only issue I would say if you are a wrestling fan, you would get the subtle like wink and nod, being like, yes, that one thing that happened in WWE like a while ago. There you go. That's for you.
Yeah, yeah. That book, man, it's so good. I agree with you. I don't think you need to be a wrestling fan. I do think if you are a wrestling fan, even just like one from way back, because like I've noticed that's a lot about wrestling fans. It's like we're all that way. Most of us have come and gone from the product a time or two for like 5 year periods, and then we come back. It's like soap
Absolutely.
operas. In a way, because I'm like that with General Hospital. I come back every couple of years and like I pick up right where I left off. I love that show. Um, so yeah, I agree. But if you are a wrestling fan, my lord, will you just like Daniel Warren Johnson just gets it. Like, and he's a fan. We had a chance to talk to him, and he's such a like he's actually a big AEW fan right now. And he but he kind of rediscovered that love, and you can feel that in this book. It's just so kind of appreciative and embracing of the art form, and then just like it's a
Yes.
really damn good story about.
There is a
Ugh,
panel of a moonsault that is so well drawn.
yes,
It's so well like I just wanted to like sit like I put it down. I'm like, this is incredible.
yeah,
And you mentioned Daniel Warren Johnson. He had like a whole thing in the back of the first issue explaining why he wrote this, how he got into it. He fell back in love with wrestling through Japanese pro
hmm
when his daughter was born. So he'd be staying up till like 1, 3 in the morning, needing something to watch, and this was it, and it just clicked. And you can see that love for this just spread out, and it's just go pick this up. We're almost on the last. What we're almost. This was the penultimate one. Next one's the last one.
Yeah, next one's the
So the
last one.
trade should be coming out soon.
Yeah, I don't. Also, I have no idea where that last issue goes with that. The way it left off. That is. That's the first swerve that actually really got me. Of like I did not. I
I
did
don't
not
know what we're
expect
doing.
us to go there. So yeah, I'm very excited to see how that wraps. But yeah, I couldn't recommend that more. If you can go find the issues, the covers have been. I mean, Johnson's artwork is amazing. So if you do want to check those out, but yeah, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with you.
And something is killing the children. Boom Studios, by the way, I made a priority for myself this year to read more indie comics. And I found myself really gravitating towards Boom Studios works because I've just really enjoyed what they've been putting out.
Yeah.
And I think it was back in early midsummer. I was like, let me go pick up this "Something Is Killing the Children" thing. I've heard good things. Pick up the first little trade, blew through it. I was like, man, that was great. Pick up the second one, third one, fourth one, fifth one. Now it just came out, and now I'm finally caught up. I have it on my weekly pull list. There's something about horror comics I've learned that I've really enjoyed. And I'm not a horror movie person, but for some reason the comics, I don't get it. I think it's the storytelling. There's no jump scares. I think that's a big one.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just so good.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not a horror person by nature. I just don't like. It's just not my genre. I will watch some occasionally, typically for the show. It's typically the only reason I watch a horror movie. Or Anissa really wants to see it, so we watch the trailer, and that's typically enough for her, and so we don't ever watch the movie. But like a certain, I mean, James in particular is fantastic at like. Yes, there's these bigger horror aspects to it, but it's really a story about someone trying to do the right thing who had a terrible thing happen to her and is just kind of still trying to follow her own path even though she's like part of this huge organization and there's all these rules and she might die at any time because of these monsters and stuff. But like Erica Slaughter, I think that's also why like the there's one particular arc, and I think it's in trade 3. I can't remember which trade
Which
it
one?
is,
Let's see.
but it's the arc where they go back and they explain her origin, and
It's
it's
4.
how she like grew up within the organization, how she became a part of it. She wasn't like wantonly accepted. You know, she had this one person that kind of took her in and believed in her, and you see her kind of grow this network of people. That's where you meet Aaron, like all these things, right? And so that one is like one that I would give to anybody. I don't care if you're a fan of what genre you're a fan of. I would give that to anybody and go like, read this and tell me this isn't like you're not hooked to see what happens after this. It's so good. And
That
House of
trade
Slaughter
is
has also been some good.
yeah, that trade, like that entire arc is essentially what made it to where this once was going to be a limited series, and you just blew the doors open and say we can make an entire world out of this. We can
Yeah.
make spin-off books out of this. We can make this an ongoing series for as long as we can tell the story. That yeah, I think it was the fourth trade what you just
Okay.
mentioned. That is the one that really I was like, yeah, I can see this going on.
I mean,
This
I really
it's
saw
it's
it.
it's so good.
Trade 3, like it was great. I've loved every single overall arc. And there are very few misses like of issues in particular. And typically the only misses in that book tend to be like there will be like an issue here and there where like literally nothing happened. Like there's like one conversation that means anything for going forward, and it's just like we took a little too long to like live in that world, and I'm like, okay, I am ready for us to like move to the next thing. Those, and I can probably say there's like been maybe 2 issues of that, maybe 3, So like if that's the literally the only complaint I can put towards your book. The monsters, while not, I mean, they are the focus, but like not the focus, because jump scares aren't. But there are some freaky scenes in this book
Yes, there
Amazing
are.
artwork by Werther. Just so, and it's just like not again. It's not a visual style that I would say like I would typically go for, but it just works. And the monsters are creepy and just offsetting enough. And I mean, the premise is also like very upsetting. I mean,
It
the
is.
name is very upsetting.
I mean,
um,
I have a stand for it right here. And there's something about it glows in the dark, by the way. So when you're coming into the room at night and it glows and says something is killing the children, it's the only thing you're like, man, that's kind of freaky, but I love it. It's great.
no, I'm right with you.
Before we go, before we go, I want your recommendations on any book ongoing right now or a trade for people who are still getting into comics. Because I always say when someone's like, man, where do I start? I'm like, wherever you want to start. Always say,
Agreed.
what's your favorite character? And we go from there because that's the one you'll be more interested to read and learn more about. Maybe you'll find another character, but let's say just on general principle and quality of books right now. What book would you say?
So an easy one is Batman Urban Legends. That is one of my favorite books every single month. It is an anthology like book that has like typically 4 to 5 stories in it. Some are continuing, and others are just one and dones. And they'll
Mhm.
have one that like continues for maybe 3 issues, one that continues for 6 occasionally, and it's all Batman based, but it is like the perfect format for that because it is these smaller stories. So like you'll have one where it's Batman and Zatanna. You'll have another one that's all focused on Alfred. You'll have another one that's all focused on Robin. You'll have one that's on the Outsiders. Um, it's yes, you're gonna get it's an anthology, so you are gonna get ones that just like do not resonate with you at all. That's fine. But overall, if you're looking for somewhere to start and you're trying to kind of get just an idea, like especially with someone like Batman, um, why not? Like you would try one of those, you're gonna get 4 or 5 things, and one is likely to click with you. And then it's a great informer for next things. Same way on the DC side. So many wonderful things happening in Superman. So Action Comics they recently launched the Return of Kal-El storyline, and what Johnson has been doing over there is just phenomenal. It's such a wonderful onboarding for new fans, and it introduces you to John and the Superman family, the extended family, Lex Luthor, all the big guns in that universe, and Superman, and it gives you an idea of like why he matters, what he is as a father, which is resonated with me a lot more. I couldn't recommend that one on the DC side. On the Marvel side, right now it's a little. There's not like a Marvel book right now, other than like the ones we kind of mentioned, like Captain Marvel. Obviously, I would
Yep.
recommend, and I would say actually from the beginning, I would just say pick up the first trade of Kelly Thompson's run. I think that's a great segue into who she is, and it gives you a really good idea of stuff. But Moon Knight is the other one. I mean, other than the two we kind of talked about, I'm trying to think
I
like
think
X Men,
Shang-Chi is a good one.
Shang-Chi. Yeah,
Shang-Chi,
that's
if
been
you're
good.
trying to get into that character, if you go like a couple arcs back, because they reset it a few
Yeah,
times with like a new, there's like the brothers and sisters, and there was Shang-Chi, now there's Shang-Chi in the Ten Rings, and now there's gonna be Shang-Chi in the Master of the Ten Rings. So they reset the line a few times. But if you're trying to like get into Shang-Chi, if you really like that movie, and they've really done like the whole comic inspires the movie, movie then
yeah.
re-inspires the comic type of deal.
The stuff they've done with the society in that book has been really interesting.
Mm.
I love that. That's been the biggest portion. I still don't. I mean, I struggle with that book because like I still don't have that they haven't hooked me on him yet. There's not that thing in the comics. There's not that thing that like, yeah, I care about you. I care about all these things
Okay.
happening around you and your family and stuff, but like I don't have that hook yet. But there's some really good things in that issue. I mean, and same with like the Hawkeye's new book. I imagine it's one of your. Are you liking the new
The
Avengers book?
Thunderbolts.
Thunderbolts. Thank you.
The Thunderbolts.
Yeah.
So I really do because it really is a Hawkeye book, and it's gotten into his head on where he's at right now, to where he's a little bit of a has been. He's past his prime, and they're having him lead a team, and he was like fourth guy up
Yeah,
to
I
essentially
did. I
lead
did
this
love that.
squad. Like, he's
That
not
made me
even the
laugh.
second pick or the third pick. He's like the fourth pick, and it was just like out of straight desperation. He's just like, "Yeah, I did the West Coast Avengers." I'm like, "Yeah, West Coast Avengers love." And he's like, "And I did it again with the West Coast Avengers." Like, "Yeah, the other West Coast Avengers love." Um,
Yeah,
so I really do enjoy. I'm more bummed that I think that was the penultimate issue, and we're going on to the last one. I'm like, man, I just wish that there's some of them like, man, I wish this was an ongoing.
I love the idea of Luke Cage as mayor. Like I love all that, and like having to go through all the red tape because of like the mess that he left. Like is very also real life. It's like real life based, you know. So like I really like some of that, but um, yeah, I'm like Marvel right now. Some of the series that I was like really kind of gung ho about kind of ended, and so and the X-Men books right now are so. Some of them are really good, but they're I don't know. It's hard for me, other than for me to like recommend like you start at the beginning and read House and read Powers. Like it's hard for me to like find a spot that like yeah you can just jump in. That's why I think Exterminators has been so fun for me. That's a book that
Exterminators
I
is
would
fun.
easily
It is.
recommend. But it's
Yep.
because it has almost nothing to do with all the other stuff, and it's just a fun, ridiculous, you know, like adventure for like four of like some of my favorite X-Men characters. But like I feel like other than that, like Red and like Immortal, like some of the other, there's so much going on, but they're not easy for someone to just I mean, we face it every time with like Janelle. Janelle has not been, you know, the like biggest X-Men
Absolutely.
fan. And so I
Yep.
look for those spots of like okay, like and that's why Exterminators took off so well. I look for those spots where I can like get someone really invested. Right now in the X-Men universe, it's a little hard. And I don't think that's going to change until the next like big chapter in
Yeah.
this thing where we
X Men
kind of
Red's
have a real say.
been X Men Red's been very good.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, Hellions is over. Hellions is great. And
Yeah,
one last
Hellions
book
was
I'd
great.
recommend for anyone is just go read Strange Academy, catch
That's
up to
also
where we
really good.
are, and then go read Strange Academy Finals, which I think the first issue and only the first issue that came out, which is like a second volume of it. Phenomenal. I can't wait to see anything of that just put anywhere else in the medium, anywhere else out there.
One thing I
Matt, I
will
think we're
say
out
is
of time. Oh,
Sinister.
go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
No, no, one thing
Sinister too, yes.
yes, that is the one that I will say coming up should be a good
Mm,
one for people to hop in with because it's kind of just taking the universe and doing some weird stuff with it. That might be a good
yep.
one for people to jump in and get some X-Men thing.
Yep. Matt, it has been a pleasure. We talked about comics for like over an hour at this
I'm
point.
so sorry. I'm
I'm
so
pretty
sorry.
sure the editorial team is going to kill me for this one, but it's great. It's
I
fine.
apologize. I'm
Matt,
so
been a
sorry.
pleasure. Where can people find you?
Well, you can find me over here on Twitter as long as it's not, you know, gone at Matt Aguilar CB. You can also find me on Mastodon at that as well. I have no idea still how to use that account, so but it's there. It's there. You can also find me, of course. All of my articles are on comicbook.com. You can check us out every Friday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time on Comic Book Nation on our Twitch channel, as well as Comic Book Nation's YouTube channel. So yeah, definitely join us. Damon is one of the most awesome people in comics, and it has been a privilege to be on the show. Thank you.
Matt, thank you. And for me, you can find me on Twitter at Damon Tweet, so long as it's not dead yet. And on TikTok on Damon Talks Comics. That's TOKS. Talks Comics on the Clock app. Matt, been a pleasure. Till next time.
Anytime. Peace, man.